It's kind of like watching a football game where you know the outcome and your team wins. Go in and enjoy it. I know it's going to be a good ending. I know that I'm going to get to 10 million one day. I know. But why do we pause and get distracted and worry along the way? What causes that?
Scratch Entrepreneur. True stories of remarkable people who dropped everything to turn an idea into a healthy, profitable business. Today's show is the third in our series of on-air coaching sessions between veteran executive coach David Quick and an entrepreneur who sits at a crossroads, a big decision point in his or her business. Today's guest has an enviable crossroads. He's doubled the business every year since he started. Now, sitting at $4 million in gross receipts, he's been pumping the brakes. The growth just seems too fast, and the weight of it all is getting bigger. David helps him address what's changed and what next steps he should take and which ones he wants to take. But before we dig in, I wanted to throw out a term that I heard today. It was in a mastermind, and the person that said it nonchalantly threw it out there, but the idea resonated with me. I wrote down the two simple words and doodled around them for the rest of the session. The group member was chatting, breaking down some ideas floating in his head, and then rather abruptly said, "I just want to learn to fail faster." Fail faster. I immediately knew what he meant. We embark on new ideas, things we think will make our business better. Maybe it's a marketing campaign or a new hire, a product we've always wanted to make, or an online course that everyone must be dying for, right? As entrepreneurs, we have ideas. If we didn't, we'd be schlepping somebody else's newest, best thing. But not every idea is a good one. In fact, most of them, at least at their inception, aren't market ready at all. So on one hand, we can't be scared to try, but on the other, if we're gonna fail, at least we can learn to fail faster. The learning curve works a lot more quickly that way. What do you think about failing faster? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and really anything else about the podcast. You can share them over at our Patreon page. Join the conversation at patreon.com/scratchentrepreneur. Okay, it's time to dig into the conversation. In this episode, Mike Werner, founder of Enrollment Fuel, brings his crossroads to David Quick. The heart of the question is, do I really want to continue to double my business every year? We're glad you joined us. Hey, this is Jeremy Goodrich, owner of Shine Insurance Agency and your host for the Scratch Entrepreneur podcast. The mission of this podcast is really simple: to learn as much as we possibly can about building a healthy, profitable business from each other and from experts in the field. Today's show is the third in our Crossroads series. In these episodes, we help our guests get to the bottom of a decision point they have in their business. Questions like how to build a scalable business, what the right way to spend marketing dollars is, how to build a niche, and how in the world you hire for a sales position, and on and on. The next hour is a real live coaching session, and you get to listen in. But since I'm clearly not a business coach, we brought in someone who is. David Quick is our business coach extraordinaire. He has run businesses, scaled businesses, sold businesses, loved and maybe even hated businesses. He's experienced tons of success and plenty of failure too. Now he coaches a select group of entrepreneurs and helps them build the business of their dreams. David has graciously agreed to share his services and co-host our show. So David, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Jeremy, awesome as always just to spend some time with you and other business owners.
So to recap, in the first Crossroads episode, you helped me and Mackenzie think about hiring and thoughtfully scaling our business. And then in the second one, you helped Ellie Sims of B Corp address budgeting for the first year after a SaaS product launch. Both of those conversations were awesome. I know they helped me and Mackenzie, and I know they helped Ellie as well. So I'm super pumped to dig into today's conversation. Today, we're going to dig into a crossroads with another tech entrepreneur who, as so many tech companies do, is solving an age-old issue. For Mike Westner of Enrollment Fuel, the issue was the process of college enrollment. A few years ago, he experienced the college application process with his own kid, his own 18-year-old, and thought, man, all this paper, all this stuff, there has got to be a better way. And so he really dug in. He dug in from the parent side and he dug in from the college side, following enrollment parts of colleges and walking through the process from both sides. And he has now developed a way for folks to go further in the process and find the perfect college for their kids, as well as, college is really being able to bring the right folks in as well. So Mike, thank you so much for joining us on Scratch Entrepreneur today.
Jeremy, thanks for having me.
Okay, so how right was that intro and what things did I miss?
I thought it was pretty good. Thanks for that.
Okay, cool. So what we're going to do here is really dig in. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your business. I did an intro of kind of how it started, kind of the origin story of the business. What's happened since you started the business?
Well, for a long time, enrollment was done a certain way where colleges didn't have to work really hard to get students. But today they're competing against one another because higher education is being scrutinized, the value of such, and it's becoming harder and harder to do things. So they can't always do what they've always done to be successful. And like you mentioned, I saw this firsthand as a parent almost 4 years ago, when I decided it was time for me to start a company. And when I met Big Dave, some of the things that I was struggling with were, the place where I currently work. I went in one day and I had a conversation with the CEO where I said, "Hey, I really think I want to leave and start my own company." And one of the things that he said to me was, "Mike, if you start a company, it'll be a disaster." And that stung. But I knew what he was saying. I knew I needed help. So when I went and found Big Dave, one of the first things that he helped me realize is that I was a daredevil. And I liked it that I wasn't being criticized for it. And I was messy and I was creative. And one of the things he taught me early on was to embrace who you are and be who you are, and be a magnet is the word picture he used. So he told me magnets attract and repel. So for the first time in my life, I felt I was being given permission to be this daredevil, and daredevil worked for me for the first time. And, right out of the gate, first year I started my new company, we got almost to $500,000 in sales. Daredevil's working. Second year, we doubled, $1 million in sales. Third year, guess where we landed, Jeremy?
Did you double?
$2 million.
Wow. That's amazing.
So here we are in our fourth cycle, and I'm no longer a daredevil. Maybe I'm a daredevil, but I sure do worry a lot, and I sure do wake up every morning, and one of the first things I do is I log on to my banking account and make sure that our cash is still there, that it didn't disappear overnight. And I have found myself not being who I really am any longer, and starting to have fear, starting to worry, and not even realizing it, but starting to kind of artificially holding my company back and throttling it because I don't need it to grow so quickly, because if it grows, then I'm going to have to do this, this, and this. And I'm just kind of comfortable with the way it is right now. So this year, I'm probably not going to reach, I'm not going to double the business.
Not going to double.
I'm not going to double. But I'm looking at, being at 2.5 million is where I hope to land this year. So, one of the things that I'm finding is that which I've been told it would be, that it's harder to scale this company. Our next major goal is to get this thing to $10 million. But that's, I need to return to being somewhat of the daredevil that I was in the past. So,
I mean, it's amazing growth. So obviously you have a great idea, you have a great plan, you've put it into place, and you've made it happen. So kudos to you for being at the point you're at right now. And then I hear that you're really, at this place where you're maybe not even on purpose throttling back. And there's a little conflict inside you as to, do I really want to get to that 10 million, or do I want to stay put more where I'm at with a slower growth pattern? And how do those two things compete with each other? And how do I find the right answer? Is that kind of the crossroads we're at? Or is it just, hey, I know I want to get to 10 million. I've got to get over myself and get over my concerns to get to that place?
One of the things I'm realizing is that, I've got to hire people, and hiring people scares me, because I'm taking on the responsibility of other people, other families. And I don't want to hire somebody and it not work out for them. I want them to be successful. So I found that hiring is one of the things that has kind of locked me up in the beginning, and I know that I need more people to support the infrastructure inside. So I find myself, instead of hiring more people, I just kind of throttle how much, because I'm the main hunter still in the company, which I don't need to be. Ultimately, I need to be creating other hunters, but I'm the guy that kind of determines the pace at which we bring in new business. And from outside, I just kind of throttle it because I look at, can my team internally really handle this right now? Would it be good to add a lot of new business right now? Would we be able to still deliver the same excellence that we've been known for in our first 3 years if I grow too rapidly?
So you're really at a growth point right now. You know what you've done in the past. You know what your stated goals are for the future, and you're really grappling with how to make peace with your next steps and how to hire and how to put the systems in place to make that happen.
That's right. That's where I'm at today.
What an amazing place to be, and what an amazing crossroads. And I really can't wait to hear what David has to say. So we're going to bring David in, and kind of the next steps are David's going to ask some questions, just kind of dig in a little bit, ask you some questions, maybe even some probing questions that ask you to think a little bit more about the scenario. Now, I know you two have talked a little bit about this in the past, but you're going to dig in as well. And then in the end, Mike, Dave's going to come back and give you kind of 3 pieces of advice, clear advice that he thinks will help you make those next steps. And then he's going to describe why he thinks those are good steps and what he's seen from business owners in the past. So does that sound okay?
That sounds wonderful.
All right. Dave, you want to jump in?
Absolutely. So, Mike and Jeremy, good to hear that intro. And in full disclosure, Mike and I have known each other a long time. We started as young ensigns aboard an ammunition ship in the Navy. And when you get to spend 6 months sleeping in the same room as somebody, you get to know them pretty well. So when Mike went to start his business, we had a quick call. And the thing I urged him, he was like, hey, one day I hope I build a company as good as the company I'm leaving. And I really challenged him to do a couple things. One, be more of his strength. And 2, let's start with some image that's a ton better than where you are, and let's build that. And he's already done that. So that there's a big check for him to say, hey, I set out to do something remarkable. He's done that. He has a team. So he's framing here that he's afraid to hire. And the question I'm going to help frame for him and your audience is, as entrepreneurs, we talk about risk and we look at it, and early on, we're all willing to take risks because there's nothing to lose. And as our business starts to grow, and I use this analogy all the time, as business owners, no matter what size, we have to drink from this cup of risk. And that when there's nothing in the cup, it's real easy to drink. When we start putting stuff in there and realize, wow, I could pour some of this over to the side, I could lose some of this. And so, Mike, just from a perspective, because we've talked about this, if you sit here today and say, man, 3 years ago, where would my business be? Where would you frame where it is versus your expectation 3 years ago?
Oh, I knew I wanted to build something better. My idea of better was simply that people would be excited about going to work on Sunday afternoon. That was one of our measuring sticks. I wanted to hear people say on Sunday afternoons, I'm looking forward to go back to work. Dave, I can just remember, and we laugh about this sometimes. I have this routine that I think all entrepreneurs do is they kind of say, if I have this much money, I feel safe. I feel good about what we're doing. And in the first year, that was having $40,000 in the bank. Now, if I had $40,000 in the bank, I would be scared to death. And soon it was okay. I'm turning on the computer. I'm looking at my banking account. I'm staying consistently above $100,000 in cash. I have this addiction where every morning I have to go make sure it's all there and kind of see where we're at. And then I started to spike up over 400,000 in cash every now and then, and I like that. But I found out I didn't stay there very long because I had more and more bills to pay. And then all of a sudden, I start growing some, and I start getting a little cocky and a little comfortable. And then all of a sudden, I get down to $25,000 of cash one time, and I'm wondering maybe my old CEO was right. If I start a company, it's going to be a disaster. But lately, that number that tends to make me feel comfortable is $500,000. That I like seeing I've got that much cash because I know I can operate for several months. Nothing else comes in. Last night I was sitting on the couch with my wife, and for the first time ever, Jeremy, I went over the $700,000 mark in cash yesterday, and I told her,
Wow.
it's not enough. I feel like I still need more. So I have this addiction to all of a sudden being safe, and I'm no longer that daredevil that I once was. But maybe I hadn't thought about it until you mentioned this, Big Dave. Is that when I started this company, I only had myself to worry about. I knew I could recover, but now I've got 15 different families that are counting on this for income.
Yeah. So Mike, if we went back to that imagery of this cup of risk, and I said, hey, what would drinking at the same pace look like year 1, year 2, year 3? And you go, all right, well, now I'm at this point. And if I said, what would be commensurate level risk in terms of spend, in terms of pushing on the gas, going back to daredevil, taking more risk? If you had to put yourself there and say, I'm drinking at the same pace and there's the same amount of risk, what would you be doing differently?
I would be hiring people differently. I would know that when I'm hiring people, I'm actually investing in the company. I wouldn't be afraid to hire.
And you've hired, so I want to talk about that a little bit before we come back to what else you would be doing. And if you look at the team that you've hired, and I have an unfair advantage, which I know some of how you've done that. You've done a lot with kind of gig economy and outsourced help, and how do I have a virtual team? And you've done remarkable things there, but you've hired well.
Yeah, I have.
I pushed you to say, hey, know your strength and support your weakness with hiring. And you and I know you've done that. And so it's more than the risk of hire. So I know you keep saying, hey, well, I'm worried about hiring. What if I said your worry might be, am I spending?
Will the cash flow continue to be okay?
Yeah. So I'm asking, is it really about hiring, or is it more about spending money on people that you're hiring?
Well, there's some seasonality to our business that I use as an excuse often. I have this really quiet period of time where I feel like I need to have enough stored up to make it through the long, cold winter because I have this post-traumatic stress that happened when I got down to 25,000 one year, and it was during that long, cold, dark winter before things would cycle through and kick back up again. I feel like I got to have enough cushion. So that cushion is fear that I'll outspend sometimes, and I'll just be frivolous, and I'll get too aggressive.
So that's emotion and fear. If instead we go to a logical side, and we'll come back to the emotional side, but logic side says, I just eclipsed 700K in the bank of cash. What length of runway does 700K get you at your current spend monthly?
It gets me probably 7 months. I go through about $100,000 of cash every month. So
how long have you gone between new income over the last 12 months? Meaning, month to month, new income comes in at this periodicity. What's the longest you've gone without any income coming in?
maybe 60 days.
You're telling me you got a 60-day problem and I got a 7-month cushion.
Well, it's yeah.
So all of it is emotional. If you sit and think about, hey, what allows me to drink at a similar pace from that cup of risk, which is before I had no risk, so I'm just drinking from it. I'm pouring it out. I'm going, hey, there's nothing in here. The cup's upside down. Let's go. Now you go, hey, I'm nervous to walk over and even pick it up. I just want to keep filling the cup. So if you paint the picture of, well, what's appropriate level risk? What do I know? Hey, even if I staff and I hire 3 people, what's the impact to my monthly cash flow? And do I have visibility to next revenue? So paint some worst cases in your mind and what allows you to minimize that fear. So I'll spend a few minutes going, hey, there's obviously fear, security. Hey, I have more to risk. And your daredevil personality says, well, where can I go push? Where can I push the envelope? Clearly, you've created more and more cushion. If I say, what's really driving the hesitancy in hiring, the fear? So what's preventing you from hiring a director of operations today?
I would say some of it is because of my creative mind. I'm very right brain. So I've got all kinds of ideas, and I have all kinds of ideas some days about how this could derail, because technology's changing, laws are changing, things that I have no control over could be changing. So I have this imagination sometimes that leads to fear, maybe. That I think is because I'm a very creative and imaginative guy.
I just want to jump in because Mike, like what you've described in the last 10 minutes, so much of your Crossroads and the way you're thinking about your business, while we have different size businesses, are just exactly in line with the way I look at my business and the worries and concerns that I have, and the looking at the bottom line number and the thinking it could all go wrong tomorrow. I just wanted to jump in and say that I'm enjoying this conversation so much because it aligns so much with my experience too.
And when we help others, Jeremy, my son has these same issues as a high schooler, and I tell him things like, Silas, I have seen the movie. I have seen the ending, and it is a great ending. Trust me. Go in, buy the movie ticket, and enjoy the movie. Enjoy it. It's kind of like watching a football game where the outcome and your team wins. Go in and enjoy it. I know it's going to be a good ending. I know that I'm going to get to 10 million one day. I know. But why do we pause and get distracted and worry along the way? What causes that? I don't know.
Oh yeah. I think it's back to what Dave is walking us towards is, this idea of the difference between emotional places to be and real, just decision making based on the facts. And I love that. So David, sorry.
Logical.
Yeah.
No, there's a whole logical emotional basis, and most of us feel that emotion more real than we feel the logic. So in that whole thing, Mike, I'll paint for a minute and say, hey, take your son's advice, which I know the movie, I know how it ends. And if it were the movie, what's the next scene?
The next scene for us, I think, is revenue of 4 million, 40 active clients, and a retention rate above 80% for my future. That's the next scene.
So that's the next scene. And if you look at, well, who needs to be in that scene? You know, there needs to be more people, right?
I do know there needs to be, I mean, from the beginning, because if I start a company, it's going to be a disaster. And the first thing I came to you with is, how am I going to create a company as good as the company that I left? And you told me to hire better in every position. So I've got to surround myself with people at every position that are better than me. And I know that. And I've done that. Thanks to your help, we've been very discerning about who is the right profile. We've done assessments to really make sure that they fit and they are going to be able to help us. And so I've made no bad hires. And everybody that we've hired, we knew going in to the hire that their profile was the kind of profile that I needed to surround myself with to make ourselves better. So it's almost like it's a no-brainer that let's just keep doing this. Let's keep hiring. Let's keep using the tools that tell us who to hire and who not to hire. Let's add people that are better than we currently have in every position, or better than me, and just surround myself with great people. And it,
So I'm going to pause, Mike. Yet the movie's on pause. The cup of risk is sitting in the table, and you're pouring more cash into the cup, and everything's on pause.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
I heard you say one thing, and I just want to check on it. You go, hey, when it was my risk, it was easier. Now I have families, I have other people. What puts those people at greater risk? You stalling or you growing?
Oh, man. You always say stuff like that when our calls, Big Dave. It's like that football team that tries not to lose. They're going to end up losing. Everybody that tries to protect the lead in the NFL, ends up, the game comes down to a field goal at the end of every NFL game, because almost every team tries not to lose. So
now we shift. Now we shift metaphors or analogies, and
yeah,
you're the coach that's playing not to lose. What should the next play call be?
It should be a play action fake and
go deep.
Go deep.
Yeah. So what's the equivalent next action for your company that looks like that?
To be aggressive, BEAGGRESSIVE, aggressive.
Yeah, and you have a good quarterback, and you know and trust them to make that play action pass. So as the head coach, you call it, and that call is what? It's hire what next? It's do what next? What comes to mind when you say, hey, those are my next couple things?
Yeah. Well, Big Dave, I've been aggressive in marketing. There's not anything my marketing director has come to me and said, hey, let's do this, that I've said no. So in some things I've been aggressive because I know that I'm spending money to make money. It's hard for me to get my mind around sometimes spending money for people is also that same kind of investment in the company, is also that play action fake and go deep pass, because I am hurting the company when I throttle it.
Yeah, and inside that sports metaphor, I feel like there's also, you see teams that are just trying to hold on to the lead by, just running the ball and running the ball and running the ball. And then we made the go deep analogy, but it doesn't have to be go deep either. It's just like play the game you played up to the point where you got that lead and don't change it.
It can be run the ball, 7-yard screen pass. So what's the 7-yard screen pass? It doesn't have to be, wow, I need to hire 12 people. It's, no, I know I need a director of operations. Let me go pull the trigger there.
Yeah. I need to call a few bubble screens in the future. Yeah. Yeah. I like the bubble screen. Yeah.
All right, Jeremy.
Okay.
I think we can we can regroup and make recommendations.
Okay. So, Mike, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, David's going to give you kind of 3 concrete recommendations and why he's doing so. Does that sound good?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, cool. All right, we're back with Mike Wessner of Enrollment Fuel and, of course, David Quick of Helping Bulls. We'll tell you how to get a hold of either of these folks at the end. But right now, we're going to have David dig in and just give Mike some real concrete ideas for forward steps and why David thinks those are good decisions to make. So Dave, why don't you dig right in?
First, Mike, and we've talked about it, is can I get an understanding of really where I am from a cash flow perspective? So you're looking at this cushion of 7 months at your current run rate. You have this viability question, which is, hey, what happens? How do I go through my cold season? You and I know that's less than 7 months. You and I know your worst case is 2 months. So that's all logic. There's a fear-based thing that is worth looking and saying, well, what is really worst case scenario today? I'd have you go through that exercise, say worst case. And then for a moment, say, if I took 2 or 3 actions, what would my best case look like? So that's just a little exercise to say, yeah, let me do the real risk downside worst case scenario, and then paint a best case by saying, hey, I know I have these 2 key hires I've been holding off. If I made them, what would it mean? What's my potential upside in revenue? Some of those you've already made. I mean, this has been an ongoing conversation, but to help offset that emotional stress side, get real fact, look at worst case, best case, and then say, what are the key couple things I need to do to pick up that glass and drink from risk to make the next scene 4 million viable? So prioritize what are the next bubble screen passes and say, here are 2 or 3 of them, and then commit to do them. And you and I can talk about that in future coaching calls that says, hey, the 2 things I know you need to do is hire a director of operations and XYZ. The second piece of all this is, where is that fear really coming from? So we haven't pinpointed that today. I asked a couple questions and nothing bubbled. I got a sense that part of that is hey, I have greater responsibility than myself. And a good way for you to think about that greater responsibility is, well, what's the best course, the best servant steward leadership position I can take? And the real place to do that is that the company is healthy and as solid as it can be. And that sometimes we cheat ourselves by saying, well, I want to take a safe route. That actually isn't the safest route. It's the analogy we talked about with play not to lose. And often we should just keep calling the same plays we were calling. Our game plan's working. And if there's evidence it's not working, that's different. But I haven't heard you say anything today or in the last 6 months that says anything I'm doing is not working. Now, of course, there's subtle things that could be better, but on a high level perspective, you got no challenge hiring. You're doing a good job. You're getting new clients. There's no real gap in new clients. Yeah, you have seasonality. Yeah, you have all the ups and downs every business has, but there's some value in saying, if my real worry or fear is hurting families of the people I have on my team, am I taking the right action to minimize that potential downside? And I could argue real easily that you're not. So there's an emotional side there that's worth rolling around. And then the third is, which I know you're in the process of, because I like looking at this daily cash, what are the other better indicators I should be looking at that let me know that I'm taking the appropriate level risk, that I am being that daredevil, that I have a dedicated team that's managing the other stuff that I'm not awesome at? And can I look at a different indicator than the dollar amount in my cash, my bank account, that might be a better indicator of health?
So, Dave, I just want to recap the things that you just described. Really, your first suggestion is look at the worst case and look at the best case scenario and see how both of those can play out. And then Mike can see, okay, well, this is the worst case and over here is the best case. And then take a couple of key decision steps based off of those 2 sides of the coin to kind of balance it. That was suggestion number 1. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Suggestion number 2 was, where's the fear coming from? I think we all have that. And this safe route analogy that you don't win games when you back off when you're winning, try and figure out where that fear is coming from and how to balance that and make sure that Mike's looking at it from a perspective that really makes sense for where he's coming from. If he's worried about the quality of life and the job that he's created for his employees, how can he make sure that he continues to provide that, maybe not just for the employees he has now, but for more employees going ahead. Anything else you want to say on that second one?
No, that's dead on.
Okay. And then the third one is, and man, this really hit the nail on the head for me too. What other indicators besides the cash could we look at? If there's an obsession with looking at an indicator, which I have tons of obsessions with those indicators, how could we find maybe more healthy indicator? Well, I mean, looking at your cash is a healthy indicator, but other indicators that balance the things you're looking at about the health of your business. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, so I think the cash one's an easy one for people to latch on to and look at and focus on. But here he wants to keep seeing that needle move, meaning I want to go from 40K, which was awesome, to now 400K, which is to now 700K. And you start to see the pattern here. And at the same time you're looking at that indicator, there's other indicators that are saying, yeah, my staffing level's low. I'm not providing the same level of service that I'm providing in the past. My funnel for prospective new clients is at an all-time high. I have more clients coming into the funnel than I ever have. So I have a couple things that say staffing levels down. I got more business coming. Again, if I look at, am I putting my company at risk for those employees that I have real fear for? You could say, yeah, I have a bolus of new clients that are going to come in. I don't have the trained staff to support it, and I'm putting the company at risk. So if I look at other indicators that give me a real feeling of health, cash will be, is it getting bigger? That doesn't necessarily mean that our company and the real indicators are indicating great health. It just says we're making more cash. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mike, we want to hear from you. David just threw out 3 suggestions, and we've really dug deep into kind of where you're at with your business. What are some of the things that have been said here that are resonating with you?
Well, I think number 3, when I heard him say that I said, sure, I'll find something else to count, whether it's number of clients, revenue, or something. But then I, challenged myself by thinking something more qualitative that was what I said in the very beginning. What I wanted to do was create a company that people wanted to go to work to on Sunday afternoon, where they didn't have the doldrums on Sunday afternoon dreading that Monday was coming. Then there were those kinds of indicators where I walk slowly through the company and I see that people are happy, and people have self-actualized, and we're pulling together as a team and doing something collectively that we wouldn't be able to do individually. Those are great things too. But I don't need to just wake up and every day and look at cash. I mean, I could tell the last conference that I was at that I had so much more activity, not necessarily from prospective clients, but just the community that we've created of current clients that came by to our booth. It just had a totally different feel. So, this is something my wife and I were talking about last night, that we needed to pause in life and be thankful for the things that are good and happening around us all the time. So that's what I took away from number 3.
Yeah, and I think maybe how to have multiple indicators comes to my mind too. It's like there's obviously these different parts of your business. You just described 3 or 4 of them, the qualitative ones that are there. How do you somehow measure that? Then, it becomes a piece. I think if we're looking at 5, 6, 7 indicators, that's when we can really have a sense instead of just 1 or 2. It's just hard to do. It's hard to put all that stuff together. Mike, do you have any other thoughts or any other things that you want to talk about here, or things that came up as a part of this conversation?
No, I just want to say that, a lot of times when I have my coaching sessions with Big Dave, I go into them thinking, oh no, I'm not ready. What is he going to do to help me today? And I always come out of them where he's done something that I just I just didn't anticipate, and it's what I needed to hear. And some of this today was exactly that. It's exactly what I needed to hear, at the right time, and I appreciate that about my time with Big Dave.
Awesome. The only thing I would push you, Mike, is there any accountability toward next hire? Meaning, I know I need this person on board by this date.
I'm working on that next hire. I've sent an offer today to this person that I know I need, and I know it's going to make us better, and it's going to give us a bigger frying pan so we can put a bigger fish in it, right?
You didn't just do that because you know we were going to have this conversation today, did you?
No, I did that because of some conversations we had last week.
All right. Good. Good.
That I knew you might be asking me about.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us on this session. It was really helpful for me. I hope it was helpful for our listeners as well, and for you. If folks want to find Enrollment Fuel, how can they do so?
Enrollmentfuel.com is our website.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Jeremy and Dave.
Thanks, Mike.
Special thanks to Mike Werner for taking the time to share the Enrollment Fuel Crossroads with us. You can find Enrollment Fuel at enrollmentfuel.com. And to David Quick for sharing his expertise and coaching Mike in our session today. You can find David at helpingbulls.com. Contributors to this episode include host me, Jeremy Goodrich. The music is by my high school buddy, Mark Vinton, and the editing is by our good friend, Christopher Lang. If you enjoyed the podcast, there's a couple of things we need you to do right now. Please first subscribe to Scratch Entrepreneur on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're there, please rate and review the show. It really does help. If you enjoyed this conversation, please remember to share it with friends as well. And finally, if you'd like to join the conversations, come join us at patreon.com/Scratch Entrepreneur. We have a community, a conversation, and all of the after shows and bonuses are included there. So until the next time, we truly appreciate you listening.